This video is sponsored by Art Neko stamps. They have great quality, deeply etched red rubber stamps, and they have a large variety and an interesting variety of stamps. They have something for everyone at Art Neko. For today's project, we are painting rocks. This is my daughter Tabitha, and she had painted some big rocks. She painted them white, cream, and gray. And now she's taking a natural sponge and she's using just acrylic paint and dabbing that on the rocks. Now, if you haven't heard about painted rocks, what you do is you paint some rocks and then you hide them around your town, and they are there for people to find. And I'll show you what we put on the bottom of our rocks so we know if our rocks get found. But instead of painting a picture on a rock, we are going to decoupage on the rocks. So here we have the painted rocks, and I'm just showing you how well she did the painting with the sponging. And we used purple, blue, and pink acrylic paint to sponge on. And these are the stamps that I'm using. And that one is called Whispering Pine. And then this one is Pansy ATC, or ATC Pansies. And then for the third rock, I'm using a tiger one, and it's called Roaring Tiger, and it's roaring at the moon. So those are the stamps that I'm going to use, and you can find those on the Art Neko website. And that's Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and that's my stamping tool, my Tim Holtz stamping tool. And I'll be stamping on tissue paper, and I use craft glue, I guess you could say, not art glue, but craft glue, to temporarily stick that stamp to my stamping tool. And then I'm just going to stamp out the tiger, the whispering pine, and the ATC pansies onto the tissue paper. And I just keep stamping until I get the impression that I like, and that's what's nice about these stamping tools. And again, I'm using the Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and I'm doing that because it's waterproof once it dries, because we are going to decoupage these pictures onto the rocks, because I can't paint. So this is an easy way to do it. And again, like I said, because these stamps are not foam mounted, and that's the way I like them, I used a craft glue, just a regular school glue stick, to put on the back of the stamp to hold it onto the stamping tool. And there they are, pretty much finished, with stamping. And they turned out nice and crisp, just the way I need them. And now I'll be using my Prisma colored pencils, and I chose these pencils because they are nice and bright. And I'm going to color the images. So with the tree, I just use a green, and I go in and I get all the little, needles of the tree. And then with the trunk of the tree, I'll use a couple of browns, but I'm just going to color these with the colored pencils, and I'm not pushing very hard, because you have to remember this is tissue paper. So it was just easier to go really light and then to do lots of layers. But that's how I'm going to color each of these images. I'm just going to pick what colors I want, and I'm going to go in and color all of the images that I stamped on the tissue paper. And you don't have to be perfect with these, because they will blend after you put the decoupage glue onto the tissue paper and then onto the rock. And then with the pansies, I just use a couple of different purples, and I do the same with the leaves. I use a couple of different greens, and I make sure the middle's yellow. And I'm just going in with the colored pencils, and again, just lightly coloring what I want to color. And with the tiger, that one was a little tricky, because that was a lot of detail in that tiger. But it's doable if you just take your time and do, a couple of layers. And I just go in with the orange. I picked a nice bright orange, because again, these will blend really well once you get the decoupage, onto the tissue paper. and that's the darker orange. And then for the grass, I pick a darker green because this is like supposed to be kind of nighttime that the tiger's roaring. And I go in and fill in some spots that I missed. And with the moon, I just did yellow and then a little darker yellow. And these are really fun to color, and this is an easy way to paint rocks because you don't actually paint on the rock. And there's the tiger, and he looks really good. And then there's the pansies, that looked really good. And then there's the tree, and that one was super easy to color. And now here's the rocks, and I'm going to rip around the paper so it fits onto the rock. And I'll do the same with the pansies. I'm just trying to decide what goes where, and I'm picking like the pink rock for the pansies, and then the purple rock I picked for the tiger, and then this blue rock I picked for the pine tree. And then with the tiger, I realized I didn't color the background because it's supposed to be at nighttime. So I'm just going to fill that in with some like charcoal gray and some blue just to represent the nighttime, because I didn't want to leave it white because then it would have looked like daytime. So that's what I did. And then I'm using Mod Podge, and I like to use a matte finish because I don't like it super shiny. And I'm just going to dump some in a dish there. And then I'm going to use a foam brush and a regular brush. But first I'm going to rip around the edges of my images. And I'm just tearing around the edges. I don't like to use scissors because you get a better blending of the paper onto whatever you're Mod Podging it onto if you tear around the images. So that's what I'm going to do for all of the images, is I'm going to tear around them instead of using scissors to cut. And then I'm laying it on the rock just to see if it fits nice, and then I'm getting rid of any edges that I don't want. And I just keep tearing until I get it the way I want. And now I'm taking the Mod Podge and I'm painting it onto the rock and onto the back of the image. And I lay it on the rock, and then I will just Mod Podge all over the top of the rock, and I will let it dry in between layers. And I like to put at least 3 layers. And now with the pansies, I didn't want that whole, rectangle part. So I'm just tearing around it, and I will do the same as I will Mod Podge it onto the rock. First I put the Mod Podge on the rock, then on the back of the image, then over the top. And I do at least 3 layers. And I try to get out any bubbles that I see. And I want that little symbol, I don't know what it says, but I want it there. So I just ripped it out and put it where I want it. And I do the same with the pine tree. This one was a little tricky to tear around, but I got it. And then I colored in a little bit of the bottom. And then I Mod Podge the rock and the back of the tree, and I lay it where I want it. And with these, you get a little bit of wiggle room. You can wiggle them around a little bit, but you have to be careful not to tear them. So I just keep going, and then I use my finger to smooth out some bubbles on the rocks. And I do the same with the tiger. Just go around the edges one more time. And the same with the pansies. Go around the edges, and there they are. They turned out really cute. That one's super cute. That was one of my favorites. And then if I see any edges, I just put a little bit more Mod Podge on it. But I do that with all of the rocks. So instead of painting rocks, we Mod Podged on rocks. And here's the saying that I'm putting on the bottom of the rocks. It says, "This painted rock was hidden for you to find and keep. Painted by Tabitha and Lori. Contact us here." And then I made a special email just for the rocks. And it says stamps used by artneko.com. And then I'm just Mod Podging that saying onto the bottom of the rocks. And when I printed these out, I actually printed it out on my printer, and I taped the tissue paper to some cardstock and then ran it through my printer. But you have to use a laser printer. You can't use an inkjet printer. But I Mod Podge at least 3 layers onto the saying that I put on the bottom of the rocks. And then once these are dry, I'm also going to spray them with a waterproof non-yellowing lacquer. And I couldn't do that on video because I didn't want to ruin my phone, because you know when you use spray stuff it kind of goes everywhere. So I'm just going to pretend that I sprayed them, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. But this is the rock. You know, it'll dry. It looks really nice. And then there's the rocks, and there's me pretending to spray them with lacquer. But I really do spray them with lacquer. And that's my painted rocks. And that's I hope when people find these, they do contact me through that email. It'd be fun to to find out who found them and where they found them, because sometimes people rehide these rocks. It's a big craze going around now. But I will have links down below to the Art Neko store and to the Art Neko blog, where I have a whole posting about these rocks. And if you want, you can subscribe to me by clicking on my avatar or my profile picture, and I'll have a couple of other interesting videos to the left for you. So thanks for watching. Bye.